Title: The Haunting Shore of Severed Legs. Tone: mysterious, slow-paced, atmospheric, with a hint of dread. Think Nexpo meets Lamino. Target length: approximately 10 minutes, around 1,500 to 1,800 words for a slow, deliberate delivery. Visual style: grainy vintage footage, simulated. Atmospheric B-roll, foggy coastlines, desolate beaches, close-ups of objects. Subtle CGI animations for evidence. 00 to 045. The Hook. A chilling introduction. Visuals extreme. Close-up on sand, then slowly zooming out to reveal a vast, empty, foggy beach. The sound of distant, lonely waves. Faint, unsettling ambient music begins. Voiceover, slow, deep, measured, with a slight echo. Imagine a place where the ocean, in its ceaseless rhythm, offers not shells nor smooth stones, but something far more profound. Something that speaks of a darkness lurking just beyond the horizon. A place where the tide recedes and the land holds its breath, revealing secrets the sea has held too long. Visuals: a single worn shoe lying half buried in the sand. Zoom in on its texture. Voiceover: this is the story of a coastline, not found on any official map, yet etched into the hushed warnings of those who have stumbled upon its desolate shores. A place that would come to be known in hushed tones as the Shore of Severed Legs. It's a tale of an unfathomable mystery, where the natural world seemed to conspire with an unseen force, leaving behind only questions and the chilling echo of what was lost. 0:45 to 2:30. Chapter 1. The Incident. A series of unsettling discoveries. Visuals transition to simulated vintage footage. Grainy black and white shots of a seemingly normal but empty coastline. Perhaps an old black car parked on a cliff. Sound of distant seagulls. Voiceover: our story begins not with a single event, but with a series of disturbing discoveries stretching across decades. It started subtly, in the quiet, forgotten corners of a certain coastline, a place that remains deliberately vague in historical records, as if the very land wishes to forget. Fishermen would report strange debris washing ashore, not just driftwood, but disembodied items. Items that suggested a violent end. Visuals transition to closer shots of simulated evidence. A single detached boot, a torn piece of clothing snagged on a rock. These are shown as if found by an investigator. Voiceover: then came the legs, not in a single ghastly wave, but sporadically, over years. A leg here, a leg there, washed up by the tide, as if carelessly discarded by a colossal, unseen hand. Local authorities, if they were even alerted, were often baffled. The condition of the limbs suggested they had been severed, not by natural decay or the sea's rough embrace, but by some brutal force. And yet, no bodies, no context, just extremities. Visuals: slow pan across a map with a red circle around a generic coastal area, emphasizing the lack of a specific location. Sounds of waves becoming more ominous. Voiceover: the areas where these discoveries were made were often remote, difficult to access and rarely patrolled. This allowed the sea to act as a silent and at times terrifying messenger. Each discovery was an anomaly, dismissed by some as unfortunate accidents. But to others, it painted a grim picture of a location where human lives met a brutal, unexplainable end. The sheer strangeness of it all began to create a local lore, a whispered dread attached to the very notion of walking those particular shores. 2:30 to 5. Chapter 2. The Evidence. Fragments of a larger puzzle. Visuals transition to a more investigative tone. Use simulated police sketches, close-ups of forensic tools, blurred evidence foam. Us. Voiceover: as the discoveries continued, a pattern, however faint, began to emerge. The limbs were almost always severed cleanly, suggesting a powerful cutting instrument, not the jagged tears of animal predation or the relentless abrasion of rocks. And, crucially, the bodies were never found. This absence was as significant as any presence. Where were the victims? Who were they? And why were their remains scattered so far from any identifiable point of origin? Visuals: a simulated forensic report graphic with blurred text. Then a diagram showing how currents might carry debris. Voiceover: investigators, when they chose to delve deeper, faced an almost insurmountable challenge. The ocean is a vast, indiscriminate conveyor belt. Limbs once severed could drift for hundreds, even thousands of miles, their point of origin lost to the relentless pull of the tides. Was it a series of unrelated tragedies? Or was there a common thread connecting these grim offerings? Visuals. Close-up of a single, weathered boot, as if being examined. Sound of a single, sharp, metallic ping. Voiceover. Analysis of the few recovered items. A boot, a fragment of clothing, offered little. They were common, unremarkable, suggesting the victims could be anyone, ordinary people, gone without a trace. Their final moments, likely terrifying and solitary. The lack of DNA evidence, the difficulty in dating the discoveries precisely, all conspired to keep the truth submerged. 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Chapter 3. The theories. Whispers in the dark. Visuals transition to more abstract visuals. Swirling fog, shadowy figures in the distance, flickering lights, perhaps old newspaper clippings hinting at unsolved cases. Voiceover. With so little concrete evidence, the void was inevitably filled by speculation. Theories, born out of fear and imagination, began to circulate. Some spoke of the area being a dumping ground for a clandestine organization, a place where bodies were deliberately dismembered and cast into the sea to avoid identification. A perfectly ruthless method of disposal, leaving the ocean to do the dirty work. Visuals. A dark, animated map showing a coastline with arrows, pointing to different potential origin points for debris. Voiceover. Another theory pointed towards the possibility of a serial predator operating in the area. Someone with the means and the ruthlessness to carry out such gruesome acts. But again, the lack of bodies and the geographical spread of the discoveries made this difficult to pinpoint. It was too widespread for a localized killer, yet too specific to be random accidents. Visuals. A shot of a boat at sea, disappearing into the fog. Sound of a distant, mournful foghorn. Voiceover. More extreme theories emerged, whispers of something unnatural. Coastal folklore often speaks of the sea claiming souls of ancient curses or of creatures that dwell in the crushing depths. While these sound like mere fables in the face of such inexplicable horror, the line between reality and myth began to blur for those living near these unsettling shores. 7 to 9. Chapter 4. The New Discovery. A glimmer in the fog. Visuals transition to a slightly more modern investigative feel. Perhaps simulated satellite imagery, sonar readings, or a close-up of a logbook. Voiceover. For years, the shore of severed legs remained a chilling enigma, a collection of disconnected tragedies. But then a breakthrough, not in finding a killer or a single victim, but in understanding the ocean itself. Advances in oceanography and forensic analysis allowed researchers to better map deep-sea currents and understand how debris travels. Visuals, animated graphics showing complex ocean currents flowing from different points towards the coastline where discoveries were made. Voiceover. A research team studying the migratory patterns of marine life and the dispersal of oceanic pollutants began to notice something. Certain deep-sea trenches and specific current flows seemed to funnel debris, including biological matter, towards the very regions where these leg discoveries were historically concentrated. It wasn't a single dumping ground, but a confluence of natural forces, bringing remnants from a vast, unseen area of the ocean to this particular stretch of coast. Visuals. A shot of a scientist looking at complex data on a screen. The music becomes slightly less unsettling, more thoughtful. Voiceover. This discovery didn't solve the mystery of how the legs were severed, but it offered a chilling explanation for why they appeared on that specific shore and rarely elsewhere. It suggested that the shore was not a deliberate dumping site, but rather a natural, albeit grim collection point. The victims might have been lost over an enormous oceanic area, their lives tragically ended in ways we may never fully know, their final remains carried by the currents to this lonely, silent shore. 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Conclusion. The lingering mystery. Visuals return to the opening shot, the vast, empty, foggy beach, the sound of the waves, perhaps the single shoe again, now covered by a bit more sand. Voiceover. And so, the shore of severed legs remains, not a place on a map, but a testament to the ocean's unfathomable capacity for both life and oblivion. The mystery of how these limbs were severed, and the identities of the souls they belong to, may never be fully revealed. The sea keeps its secrets, offering only fragmented clues to those willing to listen. Visuals. Slow zoom out, the beach becoming smaller and smaller, until it's swallowed by the fog and the ocean. Voiceover. But in its silence, it leaves us with a profound, unsettling question. What truly happens in the vast, unseen expanse of the ocean? And what other silent shores hold their breath, waiting to reveal their own hidden horrors carried in on the tide? The water keeps its counsel, and we are left to wonder.